I never meant to find it. I swear, I wasn't snooping. It was a Saturday afternoon, and Melissa had left her laptop open on the kitchen table while she ran to the store. I was just looking for a recipe. I thought maybe she had one saved or bookmarked, and then I saw it. A file, tucked into a random folder called Taxes 2021, of all things. But it wasn't taxes. It was a video. A video that would change everything. I clicked it, not thinking anything of it. Just curiosity, boredom, whatever. It took a second to load, and when it did, I wished to God I could have slammed the lid shut before I saw what I saw. It was Melissa. Melissa, my wife of 16 years. In a hotel room. With another man. At first, I didn't even recognize her. I didn't want to. She was laughing, tossing her hair over her shoulder the way she used to with me when we were younger, when we still had something real. I sat there frozen, staring at the screen, listening to her giggle and whisper things I couldn't bear to hear. The worst part wasn't what they were doing. It was the way she looked at him, like he was her whole world. When the video ended, I sat there in silence. The clock ticked. The refrigerator hummed. Outside, the neighbor's kid laughed, oblivious to the way my world had just cracked in half. I didn't cry. Not yet. I just sat there. Like if I didn't move, none of it would be real. When Melissa came back from the store, bags in hand, she smiled at me like nothing was wrong. Like she wasn't a liar. Like she wasn't someone I didn't even know anymore. "Hey, babe. Could you help me with the groceries?" she asked. I closed the laptop calmly, slid it across the table, and stood up. I didn't say a word. Not yet. Later that night, when the kids, Ava and Noah, were in their rooms, I sat in the garage alone, gripping a beer I hadn't even taken a sip of. My hand shook so badly I had to set it down. 16 years. 2 kids. A mortgage. A life we built from scratch. For what? I thought about confronting her right then, demanding answers, making a scene. But something in me stopped. Maybe it was the kids upstairs. Maybe it was the overwhelming feeling that once I said it out loud, once I showed her that I knew, there'd be no going back. And I needed to be sure. I needed to know if it was a one-time thing or something more. So I waited. And what I found was worse than I ever imagined. I started paying attention. Really paying attention. When Melissa's phone would buzz late at night and she'd smile to herself before flipping it over. When she said she was working late but came home with hair a little too tousled, lipstick a little too smudged. When she laughed at jokes I didn't hear, texting God knows who while I sat 3 feet away on the couch. I became a ghost in my own house. She didn't even notice me noticing. At first, I thought maybe I was overreacting. Maybe the video was old. Maybe it was some terrible mistake. I clung to that hope like a drowning man to a life raft. But hope has a funny way of hurting you worse than the truth ever could. One night, after the kids went to bed, she said she was going out for a girls' night. I smiled and nodded like a fool. Then I followed her. I stayed far enough back not to be seen, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. I watched her pull into the parking lot of a dimly lit restaurant, and then, like it was the most natural thing in the world, a man walked up to her car and got in the passenger seat. Not a friend. Not a coworker. A man I had never seen before, tall, dark-haired, wearing a leather jacket like he thought he was in some movie. I watched them talk, laugh, lean in too close. I couldn't hear them, but I didn't have to. Their bodies said everything their mouths didn't. She kissed him. Right there, in the parking lot, where anyone could see. Where I could see. I think something inside me snapped then. Not in an angry way, not yet, but in a way that felt cold, detached, final. I didn't confront her. Not that night. I drove home in silence, parked in the driveway, and sat there in the dark car until my tears blurred the dashboard lights. 16 years. Gone. When Melissa finally came home hours later, she smelled like cheap cologne and lies. She kissed me on the cheek like she always did, a habit, nothing more, and went upstairs without a second glance. I stayed on the couch that night, pretending to sleep. Pretending not to hear her soft laughter as she texted him under the covers. The next morning, I made a decision. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to break things or pack a bag or run. I was going to do the one thing she never expected. I was going to show the truth. To everyone. I backed up the video from her laptop onto a USB drive. Then, I pulled up the camera footage from the restaurant's parking lot. Thank God for the security app one installed years ago when the neighborhood kids kept smashing mailboxes. Melissa had forgotten all about it. There it was, plain as day, Melissa locking lips with her friend, arms tangled around him like a teenager. I stitched the videos together carefully. Methodically. I made sure there was no room for doubt, no room for excuses. When Sunday rolled around, family dinner night, I called Ava and Noah downstairs. Melissa sat at the table smiling, chatting about some school fundraiser, her face bright and animated. I sat there staring at her, wondering how she could look so normal. How she could sit there with our children and pretend everything was fine. "Hey," I said, interrupting her mid-sentence. "Can we all watch something together real quick? It's important." Melissa blinked, caught off guard. Sure." I plugged the USB into the TV. Pressed play. At first, nobody understood what they were seeing. Ava frowned. "Wait, is that Mom?" Melissa's smile froze. Her fork clattered against her plate. Noah leaned forward, his mouth open. And then, the hotel room. The laughing. The kissing. The betrayal. "Is this some kind of joke?" Ava asked, her voice trembling. Melissa jumped to her feet. "Turn it off," she shouted, rushing toward the TV. But it was too late. The damage was done. Ava burst into tears. Noah just sat there, wide-eyed, shaking his head over and over like if he denied it hard enough, it wouldn't be true. I stood up slowly, looking Melissa dead in the eye. "How long?" I asked, my voice low. She stammered. It's not what it looks like, I swear, it's." "No lies," I said. "Not here. Not in front of them." Melissa's face crumpled. "I didn't mean to, I was lonely, you're always working, I didn't think." "You didn't think you'd get caught," I said. Ava wiped her eyes with her sleeve. "How could you do this to Dad? To us?" Melissa reached for her, but Ava recoiled like she'd touched fire. "Don't," Ava said, voice cracking. Noah finally spoke, his voice barely a whisper. "I don't want to live here anymore." The words hung in the air like smoke. Melissa collapsed into the chair, sobbing, babbling apologies, excuses, promises that meant nothing now. I turned to the kids. "You don't have to stay here if you don't want to," I said. "We'll figure it out. I promise." They nodded, both of them trembling, broken in ways I didn't know how to fix yet. And Melissa. She just sat there, crying into her hands as the life she destroyed crumbled around her. I wish I could tell you that after that night, things got easier. That once the truth was out, the healing began. But that's not how real life works. Real life is messy. Pain doesn't just pack up and leave because you told the truth. It sticks around. It festers. Melissa moved into the guest room that night. Not because we asked her to, she just knew. She tried to act normal at first, setting out breakfast, offering rides to school, making stupid small talk. But the kids didn't bite. Neither did I. Ava barely spoke to her. Noah wouldn't even look at her. It was like she was a ghost in her own home now, a stranger haunting the edges of our lives. I found myself doing things I never thought I'd have to do, like calling lawyers, researching custody agreements, learning how to cook something more complicated than frozen pizza. I wasn't sleeping much. I'd wake up at 3 a.m., heart pounding, sure that it was all some horrible dream, that I'd roll over and Melissa would be lying there next to me, snoring softly, and everything would be okay. But every time I opened my eyes, there was only the cold, empty space of the bed and the deafening silence of our broken family. One afternoon about a week later, I found Noah sitting alone in the garage, fiddling with an old skateboard. He wasn't crying. He wasn't throwing a tantrum. He just looked tired. Worn out, in a way no 11-year-old should ever look. I sat down next to him, not saying anything at first. Finally, he said, "Is it my fault?" The words hit me like a punch to the gut. "No," I said immediately. "No, buddy. None of this is your fault." He didn't look at me. He just stared at the floor. I thought maybe, if I was better, she wouldn't be so mad all the time. I closed my eyes, swallowing the lump in my throat. "Listen to me," I said, my voice shaking. "Your mom's choices were her own. This has nothing to do with you or Ava or me being better. She made decisions that hurt us. That's on her." He nodded slowly, but I could tell he didn't really believe it. "Not yet. Healing takes time, they say. But nobody tells you what to do in the meantime, when the house still smells like her perfume, when the laundry still has her clothes mixed in, when every room is a landmine of memories." I thought about asking her to leave, but then what? We'd have to explain it to the neighbors, the school, our friends. The kids would have to pack a bag and split their lives between two homes. No matter what we chose, someone was going to hurt. One night, about 2 weeks after it all came crashing down, Ava knocked on my door. "Can I talk to you?" she asked. "Of course," I said, sitting up and clearing a spot on the bed. She curled up next to me like she used to when she was little, back when monsters were just imaginary things hiding under beds, not real people you trusted with your life. "I want to stay with you," she said softly. "When everything, changes." My chest tightened. "You and Noah can both stay with me," I said. "Always." She nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. "I don't hate her," she whispered. I can't be around her right now." I wrapped my arms around her and held her tight. "You don't have to hate her," I said. "But you have every right to protect yourself." For the first time in weeks, I saw a tiny flicker of peace cross her face. It wasn't much. But it was a start. Melissa tried, in her own way, to fix things. She left notes on the fridge. "I'm sorry. I love you all so much. Please don't give up on me." She offered to drive the kids to practice, to bake cookies, to volunteer at school events. But it was like trying to put out a forest fire with a garden hose. Too little, too late. One night, she cornered me in the hallway after the kids went to bed. "I made a mistake," she said, her voice raw. "A terrible mistake. But I love you. I love them. Can't we work through this?" I looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time since everything blew up. And for a second, I almost believed her. I almost reached for the life we used to have. But then I remembered the look on Ava's face when she saw that video. I remembered Noah asking if it was his fault. I remembered the nights she spent texting someone else while I sat alone in our bed. Some things, once broken, can't be put back together. "I can't," I said, my voice cracking. "We can't." She stared at me for a long time. Then she nodded, wiping her eyes with the sleeve of her sweatshirt. "I'll move out," she said quietly. "I'll figure it out." I watched her walk away, and for the first time since this nightmare started, I didn't feel rage. I didn't feel hatred. I just felt tired. Bone deep, soul-crushing tired. 2 days later, she packed her things. No screaming matches. No scenes. Just quiet, heavy goodbyes. The kids didn't come out of their rooms. They didn't want to see her leave. And honestly, I didn't blame them. When the door finally shut behind her, I stood there in the silence, feeling like someone had hit a reset button on my life. Everything was the same, the furniture, the pictures on the walls, the smell of dinner still lingering in the air. And yet nothing would ever be the same again. I walked upstairs and knocked gently on Noah's door. He opened it, his eyes wide and scared. "She's gone," I said. He nodded once. Then, to my surprise, he threw his arms around me in a tight, desperate hug. "I'm glad it's just us now," he whispered. "Me too, kid. Me too." The first few days after Melissa left were strange. The house was too quiet. Too still. It was like the air itself didn't know how to move without her there. At first, the kids didn't say much. They tiptoed around the house like they were afraid to make noise, like they might wake up some monster hiding in the walls. I tried to keep things normal. I cooked breakfast, badly. I packed lunches, sloppily. I asked about school, about friends, about anything except the giant hole sitting between us. It was awkward. It was messy. But it was real. And slowly, things started to shift. One night, I found Ava and Noah sprawled out on the living room floor, playing a board game we hadn't touched in years. They were laughing. Real, honest-to-God laughing. It wasn't a lot. But it was enough. I sat down with them, and for the first time in what felt like forever, we just existed together. No tension. No fake smiles. Just us. About a week later, Melissa called. I let it go to voicemail. Then she texted. Can I see them? Please. I stared at the message for a long time, my thumb hovering over the screen. I didn't want to be the guy who used his kids as weapons. I didn't want to punish her by keeping them away. But I also didn't want to force them into something they weren't ready for. So I sat Ava and Noah down at the kitchen table. Their faces tightened the moment I said her name. Your mom wants to see you, I said. I told her I wouldn't make you do anything you don't want to do. It's your choice. Ava crossed her arms over her chest. Noah looked down at his shoes. After a long pause, Ava spoke. I'm not ready, she said. Noah nodded silently. I texted Melissa back, they're not ready yet. No explanation. No apology. Just the truth. She didn't reply. The next few weeks passed in a strange kind of rhythm. Work, school runs, homework, late-night talks. Little moments that stitched themselves into something resembling a life again. I thought maybe, just maybe, we were starting to heal. Then the letter came. It was a Tuesday. I remember because I had just spilled coffee all over my work laptop and cursed under my breath loud enough for Noah to giggle from the kitchen. The envelope was plain, no return address. Inside was a handwritten note. You don't know everything. No signature. No explanation. Just that. I stared at the paper, my heart pounding. Was it from Melissa? Was it from the guy she cheated with? Was there something else I didn't know? I shoved the letter in the back of a drawer and tried to forget about it. Tried to tell myself it was just some stupid prank. But at night, lying awake in the dark, it gnawed at me. What didn't I know? About a week later, I got another text from Melissa. Please. I need to explain. It's not what you think. I didn't answer. I didn't know if I could handle more lies. But then Ava found another letter, this time slipped through the mail slot in the front door. It wasn't addressed to me. It was addressed to her. And this one was longer. Dear Ava. I know you hate me right now, and I deserve that. But you need to know the truth. What your dad showed you wasn't the whole story. I was lonely. I was hurt. And there were things he wasn't telling you, too. Please don't shut me out forever. I love you more than you'll ever know. Love. Mom. Ava read it once, then crumpled it up and threw it in the trash. She's lying, she said. I don't care what her excuses are. I wanted to agree. I wanted to believe that Melissa was just grasping at straws, trying to paint herself as the victim. But the seed was planted. And once a seed like that takes root, it's hard to ignore. That night, after the kids went to bed, I sat alone in the living room, staring at the blank TV screen. Was there something I wasn't seeing? Something I didn't know? Melissa had been wrong, no question. She betrayed us. She lied. But marriage, real marriage, doesn't fall apart overnight. And I had to be honest with myself. I hadn't exactly been husband of the year. I worked long hours. I missed recitals, soccer games, parent-teacher conferences. I brushed her off when she tried to talk about how lonely she was feeling. It didn't excuse what she did. Nothing could excuse that. But maybe, just maybe, I had been blind to how broken we already were before she ever crossed that line. 2 days later, I agreed to meet her. Not at the house. Not anywhere near the kids. We met at a dingy coffee shop halfway across town, the kind of place where nobody would recognize us. Melissa looked different. Tired. Worn out. But beneath the tiredness, there was something else. A kind of desperate, raw honesty I hadn't seen in her for years. "Thank you for coming," she said, her voice shaking. I just nodded, waiting. She took a deep breath. "I'm not going to make excuses," she said. "What I did was wrong. It was selfish and cruel. But you have to understand, it wasn't just about him. It wasn't about wanting someone else. It was about wanting to feel seen again. To feel like I mattered." I clenched my jaw, forcing myself to stay silent. "You were always working. Always tired. Always somewhere else. And when you were home, you weren't really here. You didn't see me anymore. You didn't hear me." She wiped her eyes with a crumpled napkin. "I should have fought harder. I should have screamed, demanded your attention instead of what I did. But after a while, I convinced myself that you wouldn't care even if you knew." I closed my eyes, the weight of her words settling heavy in my chest. She wasn't wrong. Not entirely. "I cared," I said, my voice rough. "I just didn't know how to show it anymore." We sat there in silence for a long time. Two broken people, sifting through the wreckage of the life we built. Finally, she said, "I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect the kids to. I just needed you to know, it wasn't about hating you. It was about forgetting how to love myself." I nodded slowly. "I hear you," I said. And for the first time in months, I meant it. Leaving that coffee shop, I felt lighter. Not happy, not even close, but lighter. Like I had finally set down a burden I didn't even realize I was carrying. I didn't forgive her. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But I understood. And sometimes, understanding is enough to stop the bleeding. Still, there were things that couldn't be undone. Wounds that wouldn't magically heal just because the truth had been spoken. When I got home that night, the house was dark except for the soft glow of the living room lamp. Ava was curled up on the couch with a book. Noah was half asleep, his head resting on a throw pillow. I just stood there for a moment, taking them in. My kids. My reason for surviving all of this. Ava looked up when she heard the door. "Did you see her?" she asked, her voice cautious. I nodded. "And?" I sat down on the armchair across from her, trying to find the right words. "She's sorry," I said simply. "She knows she hurt us. She knows she can't fix it." Ava's mouth tightened. She didn't say anything. I hesitated, then added, "She doesn't expect anything from us. She just wanted us to know it wasn't because she stopped loving us." Ava closed her book slowly, her fingers pressing hard against the cover. "I don't know if I care," she said, her voice small. "That's okay," I said. "You don't have to." Noah stirred then, blinking up at me with sleepy eyes. "You're not gonna leave too, right?" he mumbled. The question broke something inside me. I crossed the room in 2 steps and pulled him into my arms. "Never," I whispered fiercely. "I'm not going anywhere." The next few weeks passed with a strange kind of fragility. Like we were all walking across a frozen lake, not sure if, or when, the ice would crack beneath us. But life, as it always does, kept moving forward. Ava got cast in the school play. Noah started guitar lessons. I got a promotion at work, more money, fewer hours. We built new routines, new traditions. Friday movie nights with greasy pizza and too much soda. Saturday morning hikes that usually turned into lazy walks and donut runs. We started laughing again. Not all the time. But enough. One night, after Ava's play rehearsal, we were sitting in the car, waiting for the drive-through line to inch forward, when she said out of nowhere, "Maybe I'll see her someday." I didn't say anything, afraid to push too hard. "I'm not ready yet," she added quickly. "But, maybe." I reached over and squeezed her hand gently. "Whenever you're ready," I said. "On your terms." She squeezed back. And just like that, another tiny crack of light broke through the darkness. Then, just when I thought we might actually be okay, the second bomb dropped. It was a Sunday afternoon. The kids were at a friend's birthday party, and I was cleaning out the garage. Buried under a pile of old camping gear, I found a dusty storage box labeled taxes. I almost left it there. God knows I didn't want to spend my weekend knee-deep in old paperwork, but something made me pull it out. Inside, tucked between crumpled receipts and boring forms, was another envelope. My heart sank. Same handwriting. Same plain white envelope. Hands trembling, I opened it. Inside was a flash drive. No note this time. No explanation. Just that small, ominous object. I stared at it for a long time, every instinct in my body screaming at me to throw it away. But curiosity, or maybe stubbornness, won out. I plugged it into my laptop. There was only one file. I clicked it open. And what I saw made the bottom fall out of my stomach all over again. It wasn't another video of Melissa cheating. It was worse. It was a series of emails, hundreds of them, between Melissa and someone I thought was my friend. Tom. Tom, who had been my best man at our wedding. Tom, who'd been at every barbecue, every birthday, every Christmas morning for the last 10 years. Tom, who had smiled in my face while stabbing me in the back. The emails weren't just flirtatious. They weren't just casual. They were full-blown love letters. Confessions. Plans. Dreams of a future together, without me. I can't wait until it's just us. He doesn't deserve you. Soon, we'll have everything we ever wanted. I couldn't breathe. I sat there, staring at the screen, feeling like the walls were closing in. It hadn't been some random mistake. Some drunken one-night stand. It had been a betrayal years in the making. A betrayal that went deeper than I ever could have imagined. I don't remember much after that. I remember pacing the garage, fists clenched, heart racing. I remember slamming the laptop shut so hard I thought I cracked the screen. I remember driving, no destination, just driving, until the sun started to set and my gas light came on. When I finally pulled into the driveway hours later, Ava was waiting on the porch, her face pale with worry. "Where were you?" she demanded. I forced a smile I didn't feel. "Just needed some air," I lied. She didn't believe me. She was too smart for that. But she didn't push. "Come inside," she said softly. "We saved you some dinner." I followed her in, my mind still spinning. How many other lies had there been? How many other knives were waiting to be found? Later that night, after the kids were asleep, I sat alone in the kitchen, staring at the flash drive. I thought about confronting Melissa. About demanding answers. But what would be the point? The damage was done. More words weren't going to patch over the crater left behind. Instead, I poured myself a glass of whiskey, the cheap kind I usually saved for emergencies, and toasted the ruins of my old life. Here's to the lies. Here's to the betrayals. Here's to surviving anyway. Because that's what I was doing now. Surviving. Not for Melissa. Not for Tom. Not even for myself. For Ava. For Noah. For the future I still owed them, even if it wasn't the one I had planned. The next morning, I woke up before the sun. The house was still, the only sound the faint hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. I sat at the table, sipping burnt coffee, staring at nothing. I knew I had to make a decision. I could let the bitterness swallow me whole. Or I could set it down. Walk away. For the kids. For myself. For whatever future still waited for us out there, scarred, imperfect, but ours. I didn't tell Ava and Noah about Tom. Not then. They didn't need that weight. They had already carried enough. Instead, I focused on building something new from the ashes. I found a family therapist, someone who specialized in betrayal trauma, in helping kids navigate fractured homes. Our first session was awkward. Noah didn't say much. Ava sat with her arms crossed, her face a perfect teenage mask of boredom. But little by little, the walls came down. We talked about anger. We talked about fear. We talked about love, the messy, complicated kind that doesn't vanish just because someone screws up. I learned how to listen without fixing. How to hold their pain without trying to erase it. And slowly, a new kind of trust started to grow between us. About 3 months later, Melissa asked to meet the kids. This time, Ava said yes. Not because she forgave her. Not because everything was okay. But because she was ready to look her mother in the eye and decide for herself who she wanted to be. We met at a neutral place, a sunny park, families laughing around us, the sounds of life moving forward filling the air. Melissa looked nervous, wringing her hands, eyes darting toward Ava and Noah like she was afraid they'd run. But they didn't. They stood tall. Strong. Ready. Ava spoke first. "You hurt us," she said, her voice steady. Melissa's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't interrupt. "You lied. You broke everything." Melissa nodded, silent. "But," Ava continued, taking a deep breath, "you're still our mom." Melissa let out a sound, half sob, half gasp, and covered her mouth with her hands. Noah shuffled closer to Ava, his small hand gripping hers. "I'm not ready to forgive you yet," Ava said. "Maybe I never will. But I'm not going to hate you either. I'm tired of hating." Melissa nodded again, tears streaming down her face. "I'll wait," she whispered. "As long as it takes. I'll wait." It wasn't a perfect reunion. It wasn't a fairy tale. But it was real. And sometimes real is enough. Life moved forward after that, slowly, clumsily, beautifully. Melissa became a presence in their lives again, at a distance. Short visits. Careful conversations. She respected their boundaries, their anger, their tentative forgiveness. And I stayed steady. I stayed present. I stayed real. There were bad days, of course. Days when Ava slammed her bedroom door so hard the whole house shook. Days when Noah cried over little things because the big things were too heavy to name. But there were good days too. Days when laughter filled the kitchen again. Days when I caught them smiling without realizing it. Days when hope didn't feel like a trick. As for Tom, I never confronted him. Not directly. I didn't need to. Some betrayals aren't worth the breath it would take to name them. I cut him out of my life like a tumor. Blocked his number. Deleted every picture, every memory. Gone. Not because I was afraid of him. Not because I was weak. But because I refused to give him any more of my life. He didn't deserve it. None of them did. One night, months later, after a long day of work and errands and chaos, I found myself sitting alone on the back porch, watching the stars. Ava came out and sat next to me without saying a word. We sat there for a long time, wrapped in the cool night air, the silence comfortable now instead of heavy. Finally, she spoke. "Do you ever miss her?" she asked quietly. I thought about it. About the woman I had married. The woman who had laughed with me in grocery store aisles. Who had danced barefoot in the living room on rainy days. I miss who I thought she was, I said honestly. I miss the life we were supposed to have. Ava nodded slowly. "Me too," she said. We didn't cry. We didn't cling to each other. We just sat there, under the endless sky, two people carrying scars that didn't define them anymore. Just part of the map now. Not the whole journey. And that's the thing about betrayal. It breaks you. It burns you down to the bone. But it also shows you what you're made of. It shows you the strength you didn't know you had. The love that refuses to die. The hope that stubbornly grows back, even in the ashes. We weren't the same family we were before. We were smaller. Rougher around the edges. But we were real. And real, I finally understood, is enough. It's more than enough.